If you remember on the floor plan, let me go back to the floor plan. When we set this up originally, drew the floor plan, we put in the interior elevation keys. So the first drawing on the cabinet page is going to be the one that looks at the range. The second one is the one that looks at the dishwasher and the sink. The third one looks over here. Fourth one looks back over here at the refrigerator and the cabinet over there. The fifth one's the master bath. Sixth one is the powder here. In this particular case, it's just a cabinet, not a pedestal. And seven is the cabinet in the utility along with the uppers. And then the eighth one is up on the second floor in the bathroom up there. So essentially, remember, when you're doing cabinets on the cabinet sheet, you're doing finished dimensions. You're not doing frame dimensions because you're actually looking at it as it's being finished with the materials on there. So it's just something to keep in mind. Where that really comes into play is like if you're over here between two frame walls. Well, if you just take the 6/8 over both walls there and take out the framing, that would be 3.5 inches on both sides, so you'd end up with 6/1. So you think, well, you have 6/1 for your cabinets, but you don't really have 6/1 for your cabinets because you got to take 1/2 inch out on both sides for the sheetrock they put in. So you actually have 6 feet. So in the plan, it looks like if you measure from here to here, it would say 6/1, but you got to remember there's sheetrock on both sides of that, so you only really have 6 feet. Refrigerators, 3 feet 3, as we've talked about before, 39 inches. That's for it to have room for it to vent. And so 3 feet 3 and 2 foot 9 is going to be 6.0. Over here, we're going to have a 12-inch cabinet, the 2.6 range, which is centered on that wall. Whatever's left over, and then the 2 feet here back to the wall, 12 inches for the upper cabinet. If you remember from the plan, we had 12 inches, 24 inches, 36 inches, and 12 inches. And the whole thing here is from this wall back, so if you take that 5.5 and a half more inch out, you got 8.6. So that's, you could block it, and what I mean by that, you do have the ability to go to the clipboard and copy something, copy clip something. You can right click and go to clipboard and say copy with base point or whatever, or just copy, and you could actually surround that area that you wanted to copy. You won't be needing to do this. I'm just saying if you're starting completely from scratch, you might want to do this. And let me turn my layers back on. Three's all my layers. All. And you could bring it down to whatever sheet you're on and paste it back in as a block. And then if you wanted to start out with the first one, you would just rotate the block and then project down just like you would do from the elevations. The only thing you have to remember is be careful about the 1/2 inch sheetrock. That might get you into trouble if you don't remember where it is. So you don't have to do that, but that's a good way if you're just doing it on a different sheet, or if you're doing it on the same sheet and you don't want to really turn anything, you could just block it and turn the block. All right. In our particular case, right now I have this set to an 1/8 inch annotation scale. The annotation scale that's going to be required for the cabinets and the interior elevations is a 1/4 inch. And so I don't have a cabinet pre-drawn for you, so I'm going to show you how to create a base cabinet, and then you can take that and modify it for other base cabinets and for upper cabinets. It's basically, based on the layers and then the heights of things. So if you wanted to start out just drawing something down here like this 1 foot cabinet, the basic layers we've got here is ACAB's elevation medium, and then light, and then this is actually hidden. That's supposed to be hidden too. I wonder if I regen, if it will show up. Yep. So I did a regen, RE enter, and then my hidden line showed up correctly. Sometimes when you change annotation scales, you have to regen to make it show up correctly in model space. All right, so for that cabinet, you could just come out here to the side and let me set it to the ACAB's medium layer first. We're a elevation medium, all right. And I'm just going to draw my first line here so I can line it up with things. I'm going to move that out so I don't get confused with the drawing that's already there. All right, so the base is actually on the ground line, which is a cut line. Again, that's the boldest line, it's the thickest line on the drawing. The medium lines are not quite as thick, and of course the red lines are the thinnest. All right, so offset that 3 feet up. That will be the top of the cabinet for the base cabinet. Then you have 2 inches for the countertop here. So 2 inches down. And then I'm going to draw a line from top to bottom here. Yeah, maybe a 1 foot cabinet, so 12 inches. I'm going to trim it back. The base, remember, is 4 inches high and 3 inches deep. And if you're wondering about all these dimensions, if you look over here to the far right, this is telling me it's 4 inches up for the base, 2 feet, in this case they're drawers, but it'd be 2 feet up for the door, 6 inches for the drawer here, 2 inches there. So it's the same basic setup. So 4 inches up. I'm going to trim those lines back. All right, so I got a 6-inch drawer up here. So we got the countertop, the 6-inch drawer, 2 inches here, 6 inches there. And then we have the size of the door, which ends up being, when it's 3 feet tall, it conveniently works out to be 2 feet. So offset 12 to find out where the shelf is behind the door. That's going to be on that hidden layer. I'm just going to match it. And then the direction of the door, it's not part of the drawer, it's just the door itself. So it's going to look like that. And that's going to again be on the hidden layer. So it's partially complete. Depending on which way the door is opening and whether there's a drawer up there or not, it determines where the handle is. This should be for the bottom of the drawer, just the light line, L-I-T-E. Yeah, this. So I'm just going to match that. All right, so for the handles, they're 1 inch by 3 inch as far as the size. I mean, obviously handles come in all different sizes, but that's what they decided to go with. So 1 inch by 3 inch, and they're going to be 1.5 inches down. Well, I'll take that back, 1 inch down from the countertop. And then here at the edge, this is where the 1.5 inches comes in. But it's also 1 inch below the drawer. So most things are 1 inch, except for the one time it's offset from the edge 1.5 inches. 1 by 3. So you could create the 1 by 3 on the A elevation light layer. Not A elevation, A cab's the light layer. This one. You could just draw it out to the side. 1 by 3 by 1. Go back to where you start from. Then you can move that from midpoint to midpoint. And then move it down 1 inch. And then you could copy that, move it down here, and then we're going to be down 1 inch and back over 1.5 inches. And that could be your starting point. All right, so what if you need a larger cabinet? Well, I wouldn't erase that one, but you can copy that one now that you've got it set up, and then just mirror it with ortho on. And then this is not 2 separate cabinets, it's now 1 cabinet, so that line's not going to be on medium anymore, nor is it going to run through the countertop, because both the countertop and the base are continuous. I mean, going to stop like that, and you're probably going to have double lines here now, so you could erase one of them, but then that line, because it's part of that same cabinet, it's going to become that. Similar to that. But what if you need it to be wider? That's where the stretch command comes in. So if you needed like 4 feet or something, then you can stretch it the same distance in both directions. So stretch works by crossing the endpoints. 12 inches that way, 12 inches this way. All right, obviously now this is not centered anymore, so you would have to go back, find where the midpoint is, and move it over to where it belongs. So essentially it's just a matter of moving, copying, mirror it when you need to. I lost one. All right, let me try that again. And sometimes when the cabinets are next to each other, they're not going to be the thicker green line, it's going to be the red line. All right, so, and then what if you have drawers like this? Well, basically that's a 1-foot cabinet. You could copy this same one we started with. It's not a door, so that goes away and that goes away, but then this becomes a continuous line. Come on, match. And then you would recenter the hatches. I mean not the hatches, the handles. Couldn't think of the word. Which is essentially what that is. So now for the range, it is and the hood, the chimney hood, they are both blocks that you can insert. Just remember to center them when you get them in there. So they're going to be from the inserts, they are on that 8 caps elevation light layer, and this time still out of the blocks, but this time interior elevations probably. So we got a dishwasher, microwave, range hood, range drawing, which is what this is. All right, so it's actually when you put it in, if you put it in where it comes in at, like that, it's going to be not on center, so you really need to move it over. I think it's 1/2 inch. To get it centered. And then the same thing would happen with the hood above. You just make sure that is centered. This line is the top of the stainless steel backsplash. I argued with the people who created these drawings. I didn't think the stainless steel was a particularly green product, and their argument was, well, the stainless steel, because of how it's made, would last forever. You would never have to replace it. I'm thinking, because I've been married before. Have you ever been married before? You're not going to go 30 years without updating the kitchen. It's just not going to happen. So I don't think it's a good argument, but that's what their argument was. And there was both a male and female who designed this plan together. So, but anyway, that was their argument. But stainless steel is very high-end in manufacturing. It takes a lot of things to get that manufactured, and so it's got what's known as a high embodied energy as far as green building goes, and so that's kind of, you have to work with your trade-offs on that to make sure it's really a green product. Anyway, that was their argument. Regardless, for our purposes, that's what we'll use, and it's going to be 2 feet up to match what the distance is between the top of here and the bottom of the cabinet. This is unusual distance, like we talked about before, for the cabinet to be that high. Typically this is 1/6, but they decided to go with 2 feet and 3 feet. More often you'll see it at 1/6 and then 3 feet and then 6 inches more, whatever that would be up there. At any rate, we'll stick with that. So this is the back of the backsplash. It would run all the way across, and here is the hood, and it is also in the inserts. Alright, so that's going to be range hood. It's one of those metal hoods that come over the top, and it's going to come in to where this is not, you're not going to have anything really to align that to, so you'll have to put it here and then move it over. And I lost it, so let's try again. So if you've got a midpoint there, you can put it in and then move it over to where the midpoint is based on the midpoint of the, it needs to be obviously in line with the one with the range below it. Alright, so let me erase this. This line is coming from the wall that is to the left side of where that range is. If you look at the plan, it's going to be hard to see. We're looking at it this way, so it's actually representative of this wall here. So 4.6½ minus the ½ inch, that would be 4.6. So that wall belongs at 4.6. I'm not sure that's where I drew it, but that's where it should be. You don't really have to dimension it, but it does need to be, I've got it at 4.7. It probably should be 4.6, not 4.7. Okay, I'll correct that right now. Stretch 1. Anyway, 4.6 for that. It's going to be the same thing looking the other way on the other side. Alright, so this is open to family. This is that wall that we just saw there. That's behind the range. And then it's open again here. So they put in drawers. They could have put in a cabinet. They just decided to put in drawers there. Are 2 feet wide for the doors, usually the maximum width on a pre-manufactured cabinet. And then we look at the cabinets that are on the adjacent wall, which are the ones that are over here. So we got 2 feet in depth here, 12 inches to the dishwasher. The dishwasher space is 24 inches wide, and the cabinet for the sink is 36 inches wide. Then we got another 12-inch cabinet, another 24-inch deep base cabinet, and then we have the 48-inch high bar top with that 3.5-inch wall underneath. So we got 11 feet from here to there, and then we got another 1 feet 3.5 out to there. So you can think 3.5 inches for the wall and 1 foot for the bar top. But remember, you got sheetrock on it when you get down to here, so on both sides of that wall it's going to be a little bit different in the dimensioning. At any rate, so we've got the 3-inch toe kick here at the cabinet you're cutting through. Typically in a cabinet elevation, you don't show all the internal stuff. That would be more like a section. So you're just showing the outline of where you're cutting through that cabinet. You're not showing anything inside it, and then show the elevation itself. The 3-inch toe kick, again, is there for balance, and the 3 inches is in this direction. 4 inches high though, just like any other base. And so that's another cabinet. This is another dishwasher. Of course, it goes underneath the countertop, and again, it's centered in between the two, and there is a block for that. Dishwasher is the very first one. And again, you can put it here, but you're going to have to move it ½ inch over, I believe, to get it to where it needs to be. Now notice for these countertops, the countertop is continuous. It doesn't break with the cabinets because it's out in front of the cabinets, and the base is back at the toe kick back there, so the cabinet doesn't run all the way to the floor. So the base is continuous. When there is an appliance, it's the appliance. So basically the cabinet stops there and starts again over here. Then we've got electrical plugs, and there are several blocks for that. You know, you just have to choose the right one. So you could put them all in and figure out which one it belongs. And no, I'm not going to get very crazy about the exact placement, other than I want them centered between the top of the splash and the top of the countertop there. So in other words, between this line and that line, you might want to draw a construction line and then find the midpoint and then place the outlets on the midpoint of that. So I want those centered. I'm not so concerned about the exact location in this direction, but they do need to be centered between the top of the splash and the top of the countertop. And then this nosing, not really stair nosing, but it's a sort of nosing here on the top of the cabinet where the countertop sticks out a little bit. It's 1.5 inches. So anytime that occurs, like here or there, that's 1.5 inches out, and of course the 2 inches up. At the sink, we've got a gooseneck with the hot and cold water handles on there. Remember, at the sink, there is no handle there because this is just a panel, because you've got to have the trap underneath. There's also no shelf underneath there because you still have that same trap at the plumbing. It's basically, you know, so you don't get odors coming back up through the sink, is the reason they put those traps in. And then another cabinet here, and then we're cutting through the other one over here. This particular layer is on that cut layer, ACAP's elevation cut, and you'll see it's 2 feet for the countertop, and the 2 feet is to here, not to the part that sticks out there. 1 feet, then 2 feet for the dishwasher, 3 feet for the sink, and this is a block. 36 inches wide is pretty common for kitchen sinks. So that's going to be, where is it? Plumbing faucet, it's that one. And so remember to center that on the sink. So if you can't get a center line up here, you can always put it down here. It's on the elevation light too, should be, and just move it up to the perpendicular from there. Be sure it's on the light layer. Alright, so up above we've got 3-foot cabinets that are 2 feet up, and then of course this is the top of the stainless steel splash on the light layer. This is that same 1.5 inches out, and this is 4.5 inches from here to there. That's 3.5 inches plus a 1/2 inch on both sides, and then 11 inches. It ends up to being the same dimension as on the floor plan if you add it up, but it's labeled a little bit differently. So we got a cabinet here and a cabinet there. Most of the edge lines on the cabinets, like here, are going to be on the medium layer, but many times those internals are going to be on the light layer. So just watch out for that. The thing people have the most trouble with on the cabinet sheet is keeping track of what's on which layer. So I end up marking, you've got this on the wrong layer a lot. So if you could keep track of that, it would help you and me both. This is not a AutoCAD break line, it's just a break line I drew in. So in other words, this is basically a straight line that you just draw in, and then determine where you want the break to be. Find your angle you want to use, and then it's better if it's equal on both sides, but for time purposes I'm not going to worry about it. Just copy the angle down and then trim it out and fillet it together. So that's a break line that I actually drew. It's not an AutoCAD break line. the drawing is inconsistent on the use of brake lines because they've used it on some elevations but not on others. To be totally consistent, you ought to use them everywhere or not anywhere. But I'm not going to change the program because they did it that way. I'm just saying I noticed that as an inconsistency in this drawing, and you probably will too. But if there are brake lines, go ahead and draw them. This cabinet is 2 feet high, typically over the sink or some appliances. They will reduce the cabinet size. No fur down means that the wall is not projected out. See, like there's no fur down in here because the wall is back behind the cabinet. A fur down means that they pull the wall out forward of the cabinet and it's a little bit in front of the cabinet. A lot of times you'll see those in higher end houses because they'll have like plate rails or whatever they put up there to show off their dishware or whatever. But in this case, it's just the cabinet is just attached to the wall. Fur down means the wall comes out in front. They actually fur down with framing so they can get the wall out in front of it. And it stops there at the top, usually about 2 inches further out than the cabinet itself. Okay, so this is 5 feet, so 2 feet and 3 feet. I mean, they could do 1 feet and 4 feet. They could do 1/6 and 3/6. They decided to keep this at 2 feet up above just to match the cabinet below. And then with a 3-foot cabinet, it matches the 1 and 2 feet here, and then the 3 feet below. And then this comes over to the edge of the bar top here at the 3 feet. This, you could have made all cabinets. They could have had 2 3 cabinets here. They decided to make it all drawers. 4 inches, again, 2 feet. So basically this is the same height as the cabinet shelf, and this is the same height as the drawer before. This is actually looking at the bar top. So this is not 1 feet and 2 inches. It's 10 inches and 2 inches. So the whole thing is 1 feet from here to there because it's 48 inches high. This is 36 inches high. Again, this would be 1.5 inches out. This is that 3-inch toe kick, 4 inches high. And this is the top of the bar top, again with 2 inches for the countertop there. And then you got the dining room beyond. This is looking in the opposite direction than when we were looking at the range, but that wall is essentially in the same place, so it really should be 4/6 as well because of that 4 6.5 dimension, and I'm going to fix that right now. All right, so those are the 3 cabinets. This is the one with the refrigerator. It's a little bit different. The refrigerator, as we talked about before, is 3'3". The refrigerator itself is about 36 inches wide, but it has to have room to vent. This is a light switch, which is one of the electrical things in the blocks. They made it 7 feet high to the cabinet and above, and it's a 12-inch cabinet. Same principle though, same hidden lines. And we have another cabinet line here with 3 drawers. It's based on the same thing, 4 1-foot, 1'6", except when it gets to the microwave, we don't have a countertop on this one. It just has the microwave there, and then we've got a 1/8 space for that. And then a 3/6 cabinet, 42-inch cabinet is pretty typical above that. This line is the one that is to the right side. The closet is behind this wall. So if you look back at the floor plan, you're actually looking this direction, and it's basically the distance from here to there. So that's going to be about what, 3.5, 4. It's going to be 4.5. Should be about 2.8 because we got 4 inches on this side, 3.5 plus a half, and a half on that side. So yeah. 2.4 plus 4.5 is 2.8, and then 6 feet in here, so it's 2.9 and 3.3. And then the other side has the door, and you've got a center line to the door of 9.5, so you know where to locate it. And that's where this is the edge of the wall of that closet. This is that door on the other side. It's 6'8" high, typical door, 6 feet 8 inches high, and then this is the trim around it, which is 4-inch wood trim. So the inside line there is the door size, and the outside line is the 4-inch trim around the door. I think that door is 3 feet by 6'8", if I remember correctly. Yeah, it is. You can look on the schedule to verify. When you put in the notes for this, make sure there's a bit of space between here and there, just to make sure they read as 2 separate notes. Here we've got more break lines. All right. Microwaves are typically about 30 inches wide, not 2.9, so there's a little bit of space on both sides of that. And again, that's a block, so you can just insert it. Then we get to the master bath. And again, the dimension we have there was an arbitrary one from the designer. He centered the lavatory in there, and for the bathroom it's going to be 6 inches less, 30 inches high. I still don't think this is the best way to do it, but it is running up against the tub on this side, 4'6" wide, and the toilet's on the other side. So in the elevation, we've got 4'6" total, but the height of this is now 2'6". The easiest way to change that, and I'll use one of these. I'll take this one. Is just to stretch all this top stuff here down 6 inches. And then you would have to, the bathrooms, you probably don't have a shelf underneath the lab, but if there was one, you'd have to stretch that down through. You do have to stretch the hinges. If this was actually a laboratory above, typically you're not going to have handles. It'll just be a panel. You will have the doors below, and typically there won't be a shelf. And it's just going to depend on the size of the, if it's 3 feet, you can take 6 inches off of this side by stretching it. Take 6 inches off that side by stretching it. So, in this particular case, we've got 2'6", so you take off a little bit more. So, you know, you just, you know, keep playing with these and building what you need and then moving it into place, basically. The tub itself is not a block. I just drew that in. This is on the, both those lines are on the cut layer. These are on A elevation light layer. It's 16 inches high. I'm not sure why that's still up. Come about an arbitrary distance out here. What is that, 111? You could draw it 1.2 is fine. This is 4 inches out. This is 4 inches up. And then this is 2 inches over from that. So once you draw that line in, you can just stretch it back to the left 2 inches. Anyway, that's not a block, that's just something you got to draw. We're cutting through the tub there. Then we got a 1-foot cabinet. Countertop again is 2 inches. The drawer is 6 inches. 4-inch base down here. 4-inch for the splash, and then a 42-inch high mirror. And then we've got a different ceiling height for the master bath than we do for the kitchen. The kitchen's all at 8'11". The master bath is at 8 feet. And then we have a similar condition. This, if you remember correctly, when we figured this out on the plan, it had to be 2.9 because we couldn't get a 3.0 because of code. We've got 5'10.5", minus 4 inches here, minus half an inch there, which leaves us 5'6". We need at least 2.8 to give us some spare room for the toilet to make sure we get all our clearances in. So what was that? 5'6". minus 2.8. So 210. So we don't quite have enough room for a 3-foot cabinet, so we end up with 2.9. The lavatory is centered. Again, with an 8-foot height. Same idea, 4-inch here, 6 inches for the drawer, 2 inches there, 4 inches for the splash, 42-inch high, 3'6" high mirror. Typically in cabinets, if you've got a wall there, you typically the ceiling and the floor and the edge line for a wall are drawn bolder than any other lines. So ceiling and floor are always going to be the bolder cut lines. If you don't have an actual edge line showing a wall or cutting through a cabinet like this, then you don't show that. All right, which brings us to the utility. All right, so for this, it is 7, 8.5 from inside to inside here. So you still have a 1/2 inch of sheetrock on both sides. So you've actually got 7 feet, 7.5, and you still got this window there you have to contend with. You have to have at least 5 feet for this, and that's very minimal. So 7, 8.5 minus 5, 8 is 2, 8.5. You can't really have a 2.9 cabinet with that, so you end up having a 2.6 cabinet to make it all fit. So it's 2.6 there. And the upper cabinets, to be able to clear that window just barely on both sides, have to be 1.9. And that W3 is of the 4020 window. So it's 7, 7.5 wide, 2.6 cabinet with handles. They could put a shelf in there. I think the reason they didn't was unless they had big bleach or detergent stuff that you might be wanting to put underneath the cabinet there. Handles, because there's not a sink. And then 1.6 in this case. It's different than the other cabinets for the kitchen. This is more typical. 1.6 and a 30-inch upper cabinet. It's very similar to the ones that are back there as far as the height of things. And then this is going to be the same window you used on the elevation that you're going to reinsert, but you need to change the layer to ACAB's elevation light. Don't leave it on the elevation layer. If you steal it from an elevation, you got to change the layer. And then this is the cabinet on the other side. So 1.9 for those, 2.6 for height, handles and everything. And then the edge lines, the ceiling, the floors, and you have 2 walls there, so it's all the way around. And then this is upstairs on the 2nd floor. I'm not sure why that is wanting to be there. All right. So it's this one, and this is the one that was 3.9. And again, if you work backwards from the dimensions that are there, that's basically 8 feet 11 with the sheetrock on both sides. So 8 feet 11 minus 2.6 for that and 2.8 for the clearance there. Minus 2.6 for the tub, minus 2.8 for clearance. By code, 3.9. All right, so the lavatory centered. The seating height is different. It's actually taller than the master bath and the powder on the 1st floor. So 3.9, lavatory's in the middle. My guess is we're using 2 feet. 2 feet for the lavatory, so basically draw a construction line offset at 12 inches both ways. Plus this is going to be an uneven dimension for the drawers, 10.5. So 2 feet for the lavatory up there. Still 6 inches here, still 4 inches there. Still 42 inches for the height of that, but this time it's 8, 10.25 for the height of the ceiling. remember the annotation said a 1/4 inch, so before you put in any dimensions or any text, make sure you're set to that. The drawing will be 1-to-1 regardless, but it's better if you remember to set it before you start. That way you don't have to go back and change things. These dimensions are broken. If you can break them, you should break them. I've got one file that I'm having trouble figuring out why they're not breaking, but still working on that. Still left a line with this sort of note here. Don't forget to dimension the cabinet height there. All outlets, phone jacks, etc. are to be installed per code. Refer to the electrical plan. Typical is what that says. Dining room beyond. Let's see if there's anything else in here. This is a light switch. There's no right or wrong placement of that. Just eyeball that. More brake lines here. All right. So when you get to doing the layout for this, there are two different approaches you could take. You could create a layout for each one of these. I don't recommend that. It can be done that way, but I don't recommend it. If you do it in model space this way, you can play with where the location of things are and do it all in one viewport. But the thing to remember is, regardless of which way you do it, your ground line, notice how it's in the same place all the way across, and the dimensions are in the same place all the way across the drawing. It needs to look the same way in the layout. So I did it by spacing it all close enough together that I could get it all into one viewport. But on this viewport, you got to make sure that everything, so if you do it in one viewport and you've done it in model space, it's automatically lined up. If you do it as separate viewports, then you have to play with lining it up to make sure it lines up all the way across. Whether that's the ground line for each one of these or whether that's the titles all the way across. That's the way it's typically done. The ground line is consistent across the page, and so are the titles. It's not as critical in the other direction because it has more to do with the size and the length of this, but you know, so this was, you could, I guess, line it up, but you don't necessarily have to. But the horizontal direction, really the ground line and the titles do need to line up. Like I say, I have seen people put them in with 8 separate viewports. It's a lot more work if you do it that way. So, but you have to set this up in basically model space. So, you know, these are still in paper space here. But I drew it in model space to where I didn't have to really do much other than put in the titles. And that's the way that works. Okay, I don't think it's a difficult drawing, but you do have to pay attention to the line types. And make sure you're at the correct annotative scale. Any questions? I'm sure there will be, but we'll get to them when we get to them.